everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Team Lead Talks podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Becker. Today, we have the honor of welcoming Cyrus Martinez down in Lakeland, Florida. Welcome, Cyrus.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excited to hear. So, Cyrus is relatively new to the real estate industry, but I had the pleasure of meeting, we met like a few weeks ago up in New Jersey, in Hackensack, New Jersey, at a real estate event.
We did.
Outside of Manhattan, kind of hit it off. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
no, 100%.
We talked a lot about what both of us have going on, and I invited you to be on, and here we are. But let's start kind of at the beginning, Cyrus. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was one of those things where it was just like a crazy kind of introduction into the business. So I actually reached out to one of my financial aid planners that I had known in college, and she was a local agent here in real estate. And I've been following her on Instagram, seeing her crush it. And, I saw her in the gym one day and I just went up to her. I was like, hey, it looks like you're doing a real estate thing. It looks like you're doing really good at it. How can I learn more about that, get into the business and kind of just get my feet wet,
What were you doing before that?
So I was actually working for my dad's company. He is a forensic architect. So he's been in the architecture business for a while. So I've always had more of like an analytical edge to me, but I've really been good with people all my life. So I wanted to be more front-facing sales.
Gotcha. Cool. So you talk to this friend of yours at the gym and you say, hey, I see you're in real estate. I'm kind of interested. What happened after that?
Yeah. So we discussed and we talked, and she actually got me partnered up with my now mentor into the business, a really rock star agent out of here in Lakeland. He was just crushing. He was doing like $14 to $16 million in volume annually. And she got us connected. And then, I sought him out, basically got licensed, jumped on his team. And he basically took me under his wing and really, helped me jumpstart my career into the industry.
Sweet, man. So you got interested in real estate. You decided to join a team. Was there any specific reason why you chose to go that route instead of, for example, going in solo on your own?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And I feel like the quickest way to success is to have people in your life that can kind of just pour into you, right? So for me, it was a goal where, hey, I really needed to get my feet wet in the business quickly. And I really wanted to, jumpstart my success. So for me, there's no better way of doing that than find out the best guy in your market that's doing it and learn everything that he's doing, right? Yeah. So for me, that was
no point in reinventing the wheel or kind of going down your lessons learned on your own, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I tell a lot of my guests on the show, that's one of the biggest regrets that I had when I started our team was trying to go at it by myself or with my partner, but by ourselves, and then not realizing, or maybe it was ego, maybe it's like, I don't need it. But a lot of people have been doing this for a lot of time, right? And you don't have to figure it out on your own. There's so many courses, mentors, coaches, teams that you can partner up with that would expedite your learning curve. So that's what you did, and I applaud you. I think that's really smart. You kind of put your ego aside and said, hey, I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to hear from someone that sounds like you kind of looked up to this person in your market as like the leader. So you joined this team. What did you learn from the team, and how long were you on his team?
I was on his team pretty much. I actually just made the switch to go solo just very recently. So pretty much a year and a half, full time. And what I learned is really conversion at a high level. I think that was really what I learned, and really good follow-up tactics. So my mentor at the time was very, very big. Speed of lead. You have to be working every single day into the business. Like a day not, contacts is a day really not worked, right? So that gave me a very good footing into the business and very real expectations of what to expect, out of the industry. Because I feel like a lot of newer agents, sometimes that just doesn't click yet, right? They'll get into the business and they won't know what to do. And it's because they don't have someone that's, that they can kind of imitate or replicate off of. And, just being super intentional of what you're doing day in, day out, super, super important.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think a lot of people, especially the new solo agents, they get into real estate because they see everybody else succeeding, selling, $10 million houses, $1 million houses. And then they study up, they get their license. But in reality, like even maybe I fell into this. I was like, oh, I'm just going to join a brokerage and I'll get business. But in reality, that's not the case, right? You
At
are
all.
that point, like the agent part is almost secondary. The first part is you are marketing you, Cyrus,
Mhm.
as a brand.
Absolutely.
You started on a team, so that helped with your brand already because you piggybacked off of the team that had been well established. But at the end of everything, it's like, how am I going to proactively go out there and take charge, be proactive, and get clients? So you just mentioned a day off is like the worst thing you could potentially do. So walk us through when you were on the team. I'd be interested to see like and to hear what you did, prospecting wise or day to day wise when you're on the team, and now how you've taken that and what you've learned, like, don't like, etc., and spun that up into your solo career. So would you mind kind of just walking us through how that looked?
Yeah, in terms of the day to day, so one of our big sources of business are inbound leads, right? So we were partnered up with Realtor.com, and for us in that business model, it's very much speed to lead and being very intentional. So a lot of people around the internet will say, hey, these paid lead providers don't work. The quality of the
Yeah.
leads are very bad, but most agents, unfortunately, they won't check their phone until like 2 hours after the lead comes in, right?
And what happens after that?
Yeah,
Like
the
they're
lead's
gone.
gone, right? Someone else picked. I probably picked it up, and now we're
Yeah.
closing in 30 days,
One
right?
hundred
So
percent, it was you every time that an agent in Lackland, Florida, who did not pick up a lead, they lost it to you.
no, absolutely, 100%, right?
Yes.
So when I was taking these leads, it's a matter of seconds. Like if you can get the lead on the phone in 5 seconds, and you can build good rapport, and the framework in order to actually close them, build rapport, and set a consultation, then you're
Yeah.
golden, right? But unfortunately, what I've noticed as far as real age or newer agents, it's not explained to them that this is a sales based business, right?
Yes.
So a
Correct.
lot of the time they're taking these calls like they're customer care calls and just answering questions about the property rather than, going through and booking a sales consultation. So I think that's the very big difference in terms of seeing success with the internet.
Yeah, speed to lead is huge, especially for direct response marketing. So, or paid marketing. You're putting all this effort and this money into either purchasing leads from like Zillow, Realtor, wherever you're
Yeah,
doing it from. But chances are they're getting hit up by someone else faster. And that
absolutely.
it's serious. Like we have a company that provides leads, and there's a
Mhm.
big difference of the people like your mindset that's like, I will answer the phone by the second ring. I'll be texting them, emailing them, calling them back within that 2 minute frame versus like, oh, these leads aren't very good. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper, Cyrus. When did you call this guy back? The next day.
Mhm.
I can't help that. You can't
Yeah.
help that 50%. So 50% is getting the actual lead. And then the most important 50% is the talking with them, connecting with them.
Mhm.
And then what you just alluded to is like your framework for actually converting it to, you're not just answering questions, you're almost playing detective to be like, hey, Andrew, you just called my signpost. How can I help? And then you're not just answering like how many bedrooms, bathrooms, because they could probably find that on Zillow, but you're like, tell me about your situation. Walk me through that part, because that's the critical
Right.
part
Absolutely. So every agent has the ability to go and open a door, right? And that's what these people are calling for, right? They want to schedule a tour. They want to just go see the property.
here.
So the main thing on these calls is we really need to get them on goal, which isn't the house. It's to meet with a qualified professional that's going to be able to help them in their buying needs, right? So when we're going through that conversation, like I don't really even bring up the house. I kind of say, hey, yeah, you clicked on 123 Main Street,
Yeah.
what are you looking for, and then just go into them and start getting them to self-discover that they might need a qualified expert in the field to be able to find them something that they're really looking for. So I would say that's the main difference of approach. Take them off the goal of the house and get to know who they are and build rapport that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we taught and a lot of people teach, obviously, and maybe you can share a little bit of your script or the framework, but like, what's your time frame? Like,
Hmm.
if they tell you what their time frame is a year from now, but they want you to open up a house for them, you're like, okay, let's talk a little bit more about that. In addition to just like being a door opener, you also want to be protective of your time, right, Cyrus? Like that's the beauty of asking these open-ended questions to discover more. So walk us through, like, I am a lead and I come in. What are you trying to discover in order to help me the best that you can?
Yeah. So obviously the first thing we want is like, your motivation and then your timeline. And then we kind of want to go through pre-qual, right? Before we just take you out to a property, drive an hour out, drive an hour back, right? Your time is valuable as an agent. And one thing I see constantly is people are, going on showings all the time. They'll schedule like 10 properties with someone who's not even qualified to buy, unfortunately. And it's because
Yep.
they didn't take the due diligence to get information up front with them. And I think that's actually doing a disservice to the clientele, because you're going to show them a property, they'll fall in love with it, and now you realize you can't help them, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about the highest level of service, and that's just asking them just straight up, hey, have you gotten connected with a lender? What's your timeline like? If they're telling you, hey, haven't gotten connected with a lender, and my budget is $1,000, but they want to go look at $400,000 properties with as a
Right.
first time home buyer, probably know it's not going to work out, right? So
Yes.
stuff like that is going to save you a tremendous amount of time, and it's going to be able to actually help you serve your clients better, right? So I'm a firm believer too, if I can't help you right now, you're still going in my database and I'm going to help you 2-3 years down the line, right? So I'm going to still provide value, I'm still going to treat you like any other client, but let me point you in the right direction, right? So if you need credit report, let me get you connected with my credit repair people, and we'll start that process for you, and we're going to stay in touch, monthly, every couple months, just to make sure you're moving in the right direction so we can still help you with the goal you're looking to do.
Yeah, definitely setting expectations is super important. Saving your time and their time is also big. And I think people in the market, I think you're referencing buyers, but also for listings as well, they appreciate that level of like research or due diligence on the agents and it makes you sound professional and look professional and feel professional. And the goal ultimately is like removing, like your job is to remove all the hurdles for a buyer to get into the home that they want. So if they're not even pre-approved, that's a big, I mean, that's like, unless they're paying
Big
cash,
hurdle.
that's a huge hurdle that you want to overcome. And it sounds silly and funny and obvious, but it's
Yep.
real. Like people will, they don't know what they don't know, right? Like I couldn't go into a court of law and argue a defense for anything, right? I know kind of lawyer as stuff, but there's a nuance and a specialty that is involved in like, well, here's like the 50 things that I know, Cyrus knows, that you can kind of get out of their way, whether they know it or not, and you're clearing this pathway for a smooth transition, whether it's you're helping them buy or you're helping them list.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing is just transparency. And like when you're getting in front of the clientele, they want to feel like you're the expert, right? No one wants to get connected with a real estate agent and feel
Right.
like they know more than their realtor, right? So you want to demonstrate a high degree of knowledge base to make them feel comfortable and make them know that like, hey, you're pointing them in the right direction. And I think, I've been able to do that pretty well, especially setting the stage with consultations. I think there's such a big tool that we have at our disposal. And I know everyone last year was freaking out about these BBAs and buyer brokerage agreements. But what I found is it allows so much more of a clear sit down talk opportunity with the buyer that you can really, one, vet them out, and two, set really clear expectations. So in many cases, like I would say my average commission probably raised after the whole NAR settlement, just because I was setting better expectations with the clientele. And as a result, I was getting paid more on the back end.
Yeah, and all my conversations about that whole thing, and funny, it's kind of like disappeared, right? Like no
Yeah.
one really talks about it. It was like the shiny object. But we had been doing that in up in Virginia forever. We always got a buyer agreement signed, so it was nothing new to us. But it's just funny seeing. I mean, there are like doers, and then there are people who just talk about stuff, right? And you see these same people talking about the same. Oh my gosh, how is this going to work? Like everyone's screwed. And then there are people closing 10 deals a month and just,
Absolutely.
cool, that happened, but let's adopt it and figure out how to optimize it and move forward. There's no point in fighting any of that, right? And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. Let's change just a little bit here. I'm really curious about your conversion framework and how you do establish yourself, but I want to kind of share some information. Your first year, Cyrus, in real estate, you closed 23 deals,
That's right. Yeah, 23
right?
deals per
That's
month.
amazing. That you
Thank
should be
you.
super proud of that. That is awesome. My first year, just to have some sort of comparison, we closed 10 deals. So you 2x'd what we did, and you're in your first year, you're rocking and rolling. Walk us through just real quick, like where those leads came from, what you do in your database, and then like conversion all the way through like database management.
Absolutely, right. So for us, like I shared before, a big portion of our business last year were these inbound realtor.com leads. So we took a total of, me personally, I took 18 realtor.com leads, had 8 buyers, and as a result had about 5 seller leads that came from buyer leads, right? So that was a prime source of business that I really worked, and it worked out very, very well. So for me, one of the things I had to focus, obviously, speed to lead, getting really good at the conversation on the phone for conversion and setting the stage for the buyer consultation. And then the third is follow up, right? So a lot of the time someone will take a lead, they'll call them once, and they'll maybe show them one property, and that lead will fizzle out. What people don't understand about these online leads is your new leads are probably someone else's old leads, right? So they're back on realtor.com, they're back on Zillow, they're searching, they're putting their information in, getting connected with a new agent, right? So it's so important that you're not just like showing them properties one day, follow up for a week, and then like let them go.
Hoping they buy or sell within that like short time frame. Dude, I love that. Your new leads are someone else's old leads. I've never thought about it that way. That's probably true.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and like that's one of the, I think one of the things is a while ago people were saying, oh, realtor.com is selling like more leads than there was home sales, and it's because buyers are inputting their information multiple times. So
Yeah.
if you had an older lead and you're not getting them closed, yeah, that's going to happen, right?
No,
So,
very good point. So you talk about speed to lead. Let's dissect. I think I heard like 3 different pillars. We can label it. Speed to
absolutely.
lead. How are you getting to the leads fast? Like you're busy, you close 23 deals. I'm sure you're not just like sitting by your phone and all day every day. Like talk us through that.
No.
How do you do that?
So it's being very intentional, right? So I trained myself. So whenever my phone ringer goes off, I have 2 different notifications. I have a notification specifically for my email, and then I have a very obnoxious notification for what my texts sound like. So for
Okay.
me, I train myself to, when I hear them come in both at the same time, that's a realtor.com lead. Stop whatever I'm doing. I got to take it. Sorry, I got to jump on the phone, right? For
Cool.
me, what I was finding, I can get on the phone probably within either between 1 to about 5 seconds, right? To claim the lead. Then I'm on it, I'm talking, I'm setting a consultation. What I do is I call 3 times and I text twice, right? So if, let's say, Andrew, you submitted me a lead, you're going to get a call from me, and you're also going to get a text, hey, is this Andrew? Right? Because that kind of sparks curiosity. Maybe they say, yeah, it is. Who's this? And then they might call you back because they don't really know who's calling them. Right. So
Right.
for me, that's been super, super effective, just building curiosity through the text to get them on the phone. And that's also really important. Like you want to get them on the phone. You don't want to have a consultation over text. Like that's
Right.
impossible to do. Right.
Let me, that's cool. So 3 phone calls and a text. However, let me paint a scenario and you kind of walk us through, because I'm sure this has come up before. You're at a closing table or you're on a buyer showing, right? Showing them a house, and mid conversation, you hear your wacky text message go off and you're like, this is a realtor.com lead. What do you do?
Yeah, so sometimes it's tricky, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I took every lead possible, right? Because that's impossible. Sometimes it's just not a good opportunity to take them. I would say it's just, I still check it every time because I'm kind of programmed to check it. In
Right.
some cases, I will just say, hey guys, give me 1 sec. Let me step out real quick. I have to take this super important call. And then I'll just go pre-qual them and hopefully set an appointment. And then I'll come back to the closing table, or I'll come back to the appointment, right? So it is a balance. Having agents on your team, especially when you're getting such a high volume of leads, is probably important because leads cost money. You don't want leads to slip through the cracks, right?
Right.
So having other people jump on them too is kind of helpful if you can't grab it in the instance, if that makes sense.
Okay. As a solo agent, Cyrus, if you are unable to, like today, right now, do you have a backup if you can't get to it? Like what, if you do, what is it?
Yeah. So for me, the backup is I'm going to follow up call them probably 3 or 4 times throughout the day for the next 7 days, right?
Okay.
So I'm just going to blow them up if I didn't get them on the phone the first time. If you don't get them initially on that first phone call, your conversion is going to go down probably very significantly, right? Because they might have already booked a showing with another agent. What I like to bank on is other agents still aren't going to be as fast as me. So maybe I can wrap up whatever I'm doing in about 30 minutes and I can jump on, still try and call them and land the appointment, right? So I would say that's really the only thing you can do. One thing I have been looking into is getting an ISA that does handle all the calls for me and kind of sets appointments. So I'm not tied to the phone call all the time. But it's one of those things where you're really going to have to train up someone very well to be able to get to the same level of conversion you have, right? So
Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we had up in New Jersey. An ISA, I believe, was one of the first hires we made. Selfishly, it was because I didn't want to have to be tied down to answering every single phone call. But at the end of the day, it opens your time up to do other revenue generating activities like being at a closing table and then paying attention to your,
right. Yeah.
people, and you're not just like taking a million phone calls a day. But database management with an ISA, and this is a whole different conversation we can have. I want to get back to the qualifying part, but that's a whole nother leveraged team member that you can use to really be hitting the phones, answering your calls, setting you up for appointments while you're doing what you would need to do to bring in the revenue.
Yeah. And I know that was a really big part of our conversation in Jersey. And that was like, blew my mind when we were talking about it. Cause Andrew is, you're such a wealth of information, man. So, just putting me in the right direction and kind of helping me put pieces together that will just 10x the business, man. It was super, super cool for sure.
I try. And I am more than happy to continue this relationship since we're both in the group together now. Looking forward to seeing you grow and kind of expand your business here, whether that's grow a big team or just get the support you need. So really glad that we got to connect and talk about those little pieces that could really help you grow and scale. But let's go back. Let's jump back into speed to lead. You try to answer every call. If you can't, you blow them up until they tell you to stop blowing me up, or fine, we'll meet.
Right.
But that's like a small fraction. An insanely important part of this entire relationship building. But now you have to sound smart. Now you have to sound like you know what you're doing. So walk us through that. You get someone on the phone. Hey, I got your information. What do you do from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to provide value the best you can, right? So, you want to get them off the goal of the house, but you want to make it seem like you're different than every other agent that they would call into, right? So their goal is to get into the property, to see it, and that's what they're very fixated on. So you have to give them a little bit of crumbs, kind of use the showing as a way to get more information, right? Because that's what they're fixed on, but you're doing so in a way to help them, right? You want to get one, hey, have they, gone to any problems so far in their home search? What's their motivation? What's their timeline, right? And if you can get those things from them, the likelihood of you having a very productive meeting skyrockets. And then two, another kind of just tad bit to conversion that I would recommend is if you pre-call them well and you can get an idea of what they're looking for, book more than one showing, right? The longer you spend with one of these clients, the more likelihood that you can build better rapport with them and they'll actually convert into a transaction, right? Especially if they're pre-approved, you go and show them, 4 or 5 houses, the likelihood of them writing an offer goes up as well, right? So, it's just one of those things where I've seen a lot of agents, man, they'll go in and they'll do a little bit of pre-qual, book one showing, and then that's it. Hey, we opened the house and now we're never going to talk again, right? That's what you really want to avoid.
Yeah, good point. Out of curiosity, do you have I remember when in our team we had 5 or 6 questions that you had to get answered to be able to check that box that said this prospect is properly vetted. Do you have in your mind, and can you share with us what questions are you asking? Absolutely. We talked about earlier, obviously, are you pre-approved? Do you have a lender? Do you have a means of purchasing a property? But what else are you looking for?
Yeah. So one of the big things I ask, and a lot of agents will ask, hey, do you have an agent? I hate that question because that's just setting yourself up for an objection. What I like to ask, and this is usually towards the end of the call, well, has any agent really sat down with you and gone over what it looks like to buy a home right now in the market? Right? Because a lot of agents will go and open a door. Not a lot of agents will sit down and have a buyer's consultation. Right. So that's one, is going to differentiate you and really kind of sees if they are working with anyone that's actually sat them down.
Without straight up asking them, are you working with an agent?
Yeah, because that's just really, really easy for everyone knows an agent, right? So even if they're not signed to an agent or anything like that, They might have a cousin that, is part-time in the business and they think that's their agent, but they haven't really have anyone sat down and guided them through the process yet. So that's a really powerful question I like to ask. Obviously, as we're going through too, I'm not sure, Andrew, if you wanted to do a little role play, we can do that real quick and kind of just go through what one of the calls sounds like.
I'll be the buyer.
Yeah, if you want to be the buyer, that's cool.
Sure. Never done this on a shoot, but yeah, let's go ahead. So let's set up the scene. Where am I, submitting my information, and how are you getting it?
Yeah, so let's say you're submitting a showing request for 123 Main Street over here in Lakeland, Florida. You just want some more information on the property or set up a showing.
Cool.
I think that's.
And I'm finding you and submitting this information where?
Yeah, so you're going on realtor.com, you're inputting your information for a showing, you're just calling up, just seeing who's going to reach out and contact you.
All right, cool. So I submit my information. I say I want to go look at 123 Main Street. So Let's go.
Yep. Hey, Andrew?
Yeah, who's calling?
Hey, Andrew, this is Cyrus with EXP. I was just calling about the property over on Main Street. I saw you clicked on. It's a gorgeous home. Just wondering how I can help.
Yeah, I'm in the market and I'm looking to get in and see if I like it. I just wanted to check out, the inside in person.
Yeah. Andrew, it's a great property. What specifically about, properties in Lakeland? What has you guys searching in Lakeland?
I'm actually moving because of a job. So I'm trying to find a property. Yeah, I have about 4 months to figure it out.
Man, a job opportunity. Man, that's awesome. Lakeland's been growing a lot, Andrew. And I talked to a lot of clients moving into the area about, moving into Lakeland. Just it's right in between Tampa and Orlando. It's great, man. There's a lot of growth here. So you said you're looking to move within 4 months, or is that when you're coming in for the job?
I have 4 months, but I'm a proactive person and I want to be in my house in the next month if I can do it, month or so.
Okay, a month, 30 days, Andrew. That's a pretty quick timeline. So it really sounds like you're trying to make sure this happens as smooth as possible for you. I guess, how far along are you in the process? Have you started meeting with the lender and getting the financial side all buttoned up yet? Where are you at?
I've submitted some information on like Lending Tree and stuff like that, and I think I have an idea of what I can afford. But no, I haven't really spoken with anyone yet.
Absolutely. And Andrew, that's probably one of the most important things that I would recommend to you when we're especially looking for properties here in Lakeland, and time is of the essence. We want to make sure we get you connected with a great local lender. And Andrew, I have a guy I can actually connect you with, and that way you can get the best rates and the best deals. So let's do this. Let me get you connected in a group chat with him, Andrew, so we can really start that process for you. How does that sound?
Yeah, that'd be very helpful.
Okay, great. And Andrew, I saw that this property is over in Lakeland. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath. What type of property are you looking for here in the area?
You mean like size wise or
like if you came across the perfect property for you and your family, Andrew, what would it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think single family for sure. We have 1 kid, married with 1 child, another on the way, and I would love a pool.
Love a pool. Okay. So that's awesome that you have a kid on the way and that, you're planning on getting married. We definitely have a great inventory of pool homes here in the area, Andrew. So I'll make sure that we get you in front of some inventory with pools specifically. I actually have a couple other properties in the area that, Andrew, I'd love to add to our showing list just to, expose you to more inventory and really see the Lakeland area.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Andrew, so let's do this. I'm going to get you connected with Ryan. I have some availability later today. Around 4 p.m. I would love to meet you. And is the wife in town yet, or are you guys?
We're in town for the next week trying to house hunt.
Okay, house hunting. So it looks like we're really excited to get the ball rolling, Andrew. So I'm going to get you connected with my lender, Ryan. And then what I really like to do, Andrew, and I know you said this is going to be like one of your first times in Lakeland. So what I'd really love to do is sit down with you right before our showing. And what we'll do is we'll go over an exact roadmap to find you that 3-bedroom, 2-bath pool home that I know you guys are really looking to move into, and how we can make this the smoothest thing you've ever done and really hit that 1-month timeline that you're really gunning for. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me, man.
Awesome. So Andrew, what I'm going to do is I'll get you connected in that group chat. I'll send you over all my personal information. There'll be a link to my Google review so you can check me out online, know I'm a real person. We do a lot of business in the area. So I'm super looking forward to meeting you and the wife. Let's do this. I'm going to send you a link to a Starbucks right by our first property. We'll meet there first. And then after we talk a little bit, I get to know kind of more of what you guys are looking to do. We'll jump out to the rest of the properties. Sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Okay. Andrew, hey, I look forward to talking.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's pretty much how it goes. So it's not rocket science. It's not.
You sounded normal. You
Kind of
sound like
normal.
what you're talking about. Yeah. And you got a lot of information from that short amount of time we just spoke.
Yeah, and like there's obviously improvements you can do to any type of conversation, right? But the main essence is like you want to build and serve the client in a way where you're adding value, and you don't want to let them get off the hook of just like, hey, I'm not pre-approved, or hey, I just want to see the property. That's usually a common objection, and if that's the case, you want to make sure you can just confront it. Like, hey man, I would hate to show you the property, you guys fall in love with it, and you're not pre-approved, and we actually lose out on the perfect house for you. So let's do
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
And you
And you're
kind
not
of
ready to make an offer on it. What if, let me play a devil's advocate a little bit. What
yeah,
do you do if I'm just like, I just want you to show me the property?
absolutely.
Like, I'm not interested in that, like meeting a lender. No, I know what I can afford. I'll do that later. Just, can you open it for me, Cyrus, in an hour?
Yeah, Andrew, that's a really great question. So I guess my hesitancy, Andrew, would, showing you guys the property, you fall in love with it, and you guys not being able to make an offer, especially if you think it's a great property, Andrew, I can guarantee you a lot of other buyers do too, right? So I would hate for you guys to fall in love with this one specifically and not be able to actually move forward on it. So Andrew, let's do this. I would still be more than happy to meet you. Let's at least get the conversation started with the lender. And then when me and you meet, what I'll do is I'll cut out an extra 15 minutes of my time, Andrew, and we'll sit down and really go through what you're looking for. Sound fair?
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. So you reiterate the issue,
Right.
but not in a like a confrontational tone or manner. And then
Yeah.
you still walk me through how you're going to resolve that issue to make it a seamless transition or transaction
Absolutely.
for us.
Absolutely. And there's instances where sometimes you get the gut feeling and you want to jump out to the property, right? If they're saying, "Hey, I got a home to sell, I'm going all cash," like that sounds great, right? So sometimes, you'll throw a little, you'll gamble a little bit, and you'll go meet them at the property and maybe try
Yes.
and get a BBA signed there.
Yep.
But that's a very specific type of buyer, right? You don't want to do that with every single client because it's going to waste a lot of money and wasted gas and a lot of lost time, right?
Yep.
So
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. That was really cool. Super helpful for the prospect.
yeah,
It made me feel like you knew what the hell you're doing and you weren't
absolutely.
just like, yeah. And again, going back to, they probably appreciate this. They don't just want someone that's like, cool, I'll meet you over there. And they're like, you didn't really ask anything about me. Like, it
Well,
raises a little bit of suspicion if someone's just like a yes man kind of person.
absolutely, because it makes them sound desperate, unfortunately. And we're professionals in the industry, right? And I feel like people don't take it that seriously. When we're coming up, we need to show our expertise and we need to help people and walk them through the correct way to do things, right?
Yeah.
So there's a system and a process to everything, and it's super important that you follow the process.
Yep. Yep. Cool, man. Okay. So you got my information. We're going to do a buyer consultation at Starbucks. You buying the coffee or am I buying the coffee? I don't
I'm
know.
buying the coffee. I'm
Okay.
buying the
Okay.
coffee. Anything service that you can do, I would say do it, man.
Yeah.
It's just gonna
I
help
always
you.
get a venti. So if you're cool with that,
Hey,
I'll work with you.
we'll run
So
it up.
yeah. So, all right, you meet with me, you get like a full understanding. Maybe I graduate to a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom with the pool. We get pre qualified. Then you start showing me properties. Now we're in this like you're working with me, but you also have all this other database that needs your attention. You mentioned touches and keeping track and, in communication with all of the people that you have. Or time management is super important. How are you
Absolutely.
managing all this? How are you keeping yourself organized?
So when I first got into the business, I basically just used a straight up Excel spreadsheet, right? And I know it's pretty common. A lot of agents will do it. And that's kind of how I managed my leads that I came in, or very hot leads, people that I knew would transact within the next 30 days to 90 days. Like for me,
Yeah.
that was a really good. That's going on the Excel spreadsheet, right? Everyone else, we were kind of just throwing into our brokerage CRM, right? And we were kind of just following up with them and kind of keeping tabs on them that way. I will
Can I
say
ask a
my first,
tactical question there before?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're throwing people into this spreadsheet that are hot. You're throwing
Mhm.
people into a different database somewhere else that aren't
Right.
hot. But how are you remembering, like, what are you doing when, okay, you got to touch Andrew. He's in this database over here. Like, what does that mean from a tactical level? Like, what are you
Yeah.
actually doing?
Yeah, so from a tactical level, for me, all of my hot leads, they were getting touched at least like 2 times a week, right? I was
What are you
just
doing though? Like 2 times a week? What is? Give me
calling,
like.
texting, getting them back on the phone, right? So like for me, I can send them emails and stuff like that. I don't believe that's going to move the needle as much as getting them back on the phone and setting another appointment, right? One other thing, when we're setting the stage for these follow-ups, right? After the initial consultation, booking a meeting from your previous meeting is going to make your follow-ups so much easier, right?
Love
So
that, dude. That's awesome that you just said that. For those of you listening, when you're with them on the phone or in person, always book the next meeting during that meeting. That is an excellent way not to get ghosted and to keep yourself in the conversation.
absolutely. And that took some trial and error to figure out. But after you do it enough times, you know that that's going to significantly increase your likelihood of follow-ups and turning it into an actual closed sale, right? So
Yeah.
booking a meeting from a meeting, dude, it's magic, right? The other thing, like, you still want to be providing them value. So obviously you can set them up on a drip campaign. Every other agent is setting them up on a drip campaign that they've ever put their information into, right? So they're still
Yeah.
getting properties. They're still probably searching Zillow. So what's different, or taking a different approach to that, is, if you have your hot leads and you did well and you did a very good buyer consultation, I would say take like 5 minutes. It's not very hard. Go into the MLS, handpick out a couple properties and say, hey, I actually got these properties lined up for us. Do you have some availability this week? I'd love to show them to you.
Okay.
Right. And you're kind of forcing the appointment, right? And that's going to build curiosity and give them something to look forward to so you can get out in front of them again. I
Yeah.
feel like that's people's hardest hurdle to get through, is after you get through the initial showing, like when's the next time you can meet and get face to face? Because that's ultimately where the needle is pushed, right? Is those face to face interactions.
Right. Right. Okay. So in your spread, are you still using this spreadsheet, by the way? Like, what are you
I
doing now?
am. I'll be honest. I am still using the spreadsheet. I did.
Dude, we
I
gotta
did.
talk, man. Get off of this spreadsheet. You're
I
too
know.
you're too good at your job to be working out of a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I know. I did graduate to Follow Up Boss, so I am kind of working leads through Follow Up Boss. Now I'm getting different touch reminders from there. But all the
Yeah.
hot leads are still going into the spreadsheet. So I look at that every day and I'm kind of
Okay.
just analyzing who's in the pipeline, right?
Right. 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 Cool. Okay. So your touches, you're working with buyers, you're sending them properties, you're trying to get to that next level of, putting a property under contract and ultimately closing. All right, so let's come to like the final part. This is something I shared with you that we did not do very well, was like working our sphere and our, our referrals and contacts that we have worked with. We kind of missed the boat there and turned into a very transactional type of approach versus like, hey, Cyrus, we just closed. Who do you know can buy or sell? We didn't. We were of the mindset of like, oh, if Cyrus has someone, he's just going to refer me. It's not the
Yeah.
case. And you see like your friend buying a house with like some colleague of yours in the same office. You're like, what the hell? So let's kind of come full circle here. We talked about speed to lead. We talked about how important that was and how to kind of frame the conversation to make the best use of your time and their time and to set expectations properly, ultimately to get them, their house sold if it's a listing, or to get them purchasing a property if they're a buyer. So now, you just worked me as a lead, you helped me buy a house with a pool. What do you do in your repertoire of like touches for your past clients? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So past clients is I fell victim to that too, Andrew. So we're very similar in that. My first year in the business, it was very transactional. I will have to admit, right? So for me, it was kind of speed to lead, onto the next lead, close it, boom, speed to lead, onto the next lead, close it.
Right.
And I've realized that, man, there's probably a lot of opportunity that I'm leaving on the table. So one thing that I've gone back and done more recently is just call them up, just like all my leads. Hey, I know you probably haven't heard from me in a couple months. I apologize for not staying in touch. How are you doing? How's the house going? Right. That way you can still get back out in front of them and like, start building that relationship from scratch. I feel like a lot of agents have the limiting belief that, hey, if I haven't talked to this person in a while, maybe it's a little awkward for me to talk to them now. I would say just get through that, right? Like just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and kind of just almost reintroduce yourself and apologize for not staying in touch.
Yeah.
And that's going to help tremendously, especially building the business. Like I've already started garnering some referrals from that, and it's just one of those things like how many referrals did I leave on the table by probably not doing this sooner?
Yep. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, you feel weird about it, but at the end of the day, if you're not going to make that call, even if it's been like 3 or 4 months, someone else is going to make that call eventually, and
Absolutely.
they're going to get that business. So that takes a lot of courage, I think, to do that. But as you get that just built into your mindset, like you have, Cyrus, you're telling me, you have an hour block or two where you're making your outbound calls. That is what it takes. You just pound the phones and you get used to it. And what's the worst that can happen? Hey,
Exactly.
stop calling me. You're like, cool. Have a great day, and you kind of move on.
Yeah. Awesome.
I did have a question, Cyrus. I'm going to put you on the spot because
Sure.
we talked a lot about standard operating procedures and playbooks. And
Yeah.
subsequently, I shared you the playbook of playbooks and then the playbook template. Have you started to use them yet? And what are
I
your initial thoughts around the concept?
Absolutely. So playbooks are super interesting. I haven't implemented them yet, but
Okay.
going forward, I definitely want to start documenting my system. Especially for me, it's a really big goal, Andrew, to build out a team of agents that I can really train at a high level and show them the correct way to do business.
Yeah.
And having those playbooks, man, I know it's going to be so beneficial to set the stage, and onboarding is going to be so much easier in ramping them up into production.
Yeah. Yeah. The person that I got those playbooks from, he was one of my coaches for my SaaS companies, but it's interchangeable in industry. But he always said, getting someone else to do 80% of whatever that you don't want to do is 100% awesome. So
Right.
if you don't want to update MLS when a property goes from active to pending,
Mhm.
you record it, you PDF it, you put it into a playbook, and then you can say, hey, John, hey, Mary, like, this is your job now. And then there's, the step by step, and then ultimately the checklist to make sure. And then what does that help you with? If someone screws up something, gives you that audit process of like,
Yeah.
well, here's the 5 thing checklist. Like, did you do number 4? No, you didn't. Oh, cool. That's where it went haywire. So
Yeah.
it also gives you the opportunity to hold people accountable and make sure that it gets done the way that Cyrus wants it to get done for whatever it is.
Absolutely. And that's such an important point because as you're growing the business, sales is probably the most important thing that we do, right? So anything that's going to be a money making activity. So lead
Right.
generation, going appointments, closing, having a system in place to delegate all of the paperwork and all of the busy work that we have to deal with is
Yeah.
going to allow production to reach levels that you've probably never even thought of because
Yeah.
you're buying so much time back. Right. So I find it so fascinating how agents will go and they'll have one transaction. They say, hey, I can't lead generate because,
Yeah.
I'm putting out fires on this one deal. Right. And I guess sometimes takes up their whole month of working. But there's other agents who are doing 10, 20 deals, have it all, outlined and streamlined, and they can do that type of activity just because
Yeah.
they're constantly having, delegating that type of work. Right.
You need systems and you need processes to scale. There is going to be a point, Cyrus, where you physically would not be able to continue working at the volume that you're going to be doing. Not saying it's here yet, but it's going to be here maybe tomorrow, a month from now, 6 months from now, where you will not have that capacity level. Unless you want to work 24 hours a day, and I don't think your spouse and you have a baby on the way or a
I
newborn, right?
do. Yeah. Newborn on the way. He'll be here in
Yeah.
about 2 months.
Yeah, so you have a lot of work to do to put these systems and processes in place. So your spouse will appreciate that. But you can't. I mean, look at any company. I told you up in New Jersey I like to read, and
Yeah.
buy back your time. I think I've heard that before, and that's one of the books I shared with you. But I study a lot of CEOs, not like in addition to like Fortune 500 and 1,000, just like the everyday CEO that I follow on Instagram, and
Mhm.
I kid you not, like the 9 out of 10 of them are like, how do you scale? And it's like, I have a system, I have a process for literally making coffee. It's like step one, do this. And it's funny, but it's like, and that's
Yeah.
like a very silly one, or like anyone can make coffee, I guess. But if you spend time teaching someone that's time that you spent away. So
100.
systematize literally everything. One thing that I shared with you before, but hopefully share with everyone listening is when you do something for the first time, ask yourself, do I have a playbook for this? And if you don't, start one and then just get it on paper, get it recorded, get it so you are working it. It'd be great if it was a live doc so you don't have to worry about version control, and then have, a library somewhere. So Cyrus, when you start to get people on, there's a marketing playbook or section with all the marketing stuff, a sales. But that's how you are gonna, and anyone listening, are gonna grow in your sales role, right? For the most part, you're gonna start sales and you'll be the salesperson, but then you're starting to leverage all this other stuff like your ISA, Cyrus. Imagine if you never had to answer the phone. Would
Yeah.
your life be a little bit better?
I know my wife would be a lot happier. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that should be like a focus of what you do. But yeah, this has been great. Let me ask you just one thing. What's the biggest lesson? I know you've been in for a couple of years now. What's the biggest like mistake, lessons learned that you've had since you began in real estate to date?
Man, for me, it's definitely going to be lack of follow up, man. It's just one of those things where you're banking on a piece of business, you think it's going to be there, and you're so confident in it that you almost deceive yourself into thinking that like, hey, you don't need to call that person. They're just going to
Right.
transact with you. I think that's something a lot of new agents face, and a lot of just agents in the industry is like thinking they don't have to touch the people they know as much in
Yeah.
terms of a contact, right? I've probably lost a decent amount of business to that, right? And thinking, hey, I have this piece of business on lock. Like, oh, they'll hit me up whenever.
Yeah.
So for me, that's definitely probably one of the big takeaways in terms of just getting up my conversion and getting more sales on the books, for sure.
Yeah, when I'm not in sales anymore, as you know, but when I was, we had 10 core values that we followed. And one of them, I think number 6, was never make assumptions. Never assume that your friend or, the person that will call you when the time is right is going to. Because they're going to say, oh, I didn't know, I hadn't heard from you, whatever the case may be. So the end of the day, you got to put in the work, you got to pick up the phone, you got to make the calls. And then hopefully the idea is it compounds over time and
Absolutely.
you start to do some real volume, get more team members, more leverage here and there to really grow and scale.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the name of the game. That's the goal, man.
Yes, sir. So Cyrus, this has been awesome. I hope those listening picked up that the goal of the Team Lead Talks podcast is for anyone listening, if they can at least pick up one thing that they could implement in their life or their career or their business, then we've done our job having this conversation. So I appreciate you sharing what you've learned thus far. And I'm really excited to see where your career goes. And, we're going to be keeping in touch because of some of the stuff we're doing outside of this. But
Absolutely.
if anyone is coming down to the Tampa area, Lakeland, Florida area, how does one get in contact with Cyrus?
Yeah, so easiest way is probably Instagram. If you want to send me a DM, I'm cmb.realtor on Instagram, or you can give me a call. My number is 561-777-6269. Would love to talk to anyone either looking to get into the real estate profession or anyone just looking to relocate to the Lakeland or Tampa area.
Awesome. Well, I will also provide that information in the description of this episode. But thank you so much again for your time. It was a great time talking with you. And, I'm looking forward to see where you take it from here.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Talk soon. Bye.
All right. Talk soon.